Imagine discovering that your brain has been entirely hacked.
Oh, wow.
And I don't mean like your bank account or your biometric data. I mean your actual lived memories.
Right, the stuff that makes you you.
Exactly. Like the moments of joy, the feeling of safety, the warmth of a loved one. Imagine all of that is just chemically suppressed by microscopic nanobots.
Just completely blocked out.
Yeah. And instead, you're forced to relive your absolute worst nightmare on this endless, inescapable neurological loop.
It's just a terrifying premise.
It really is. And, it makes you ask what kind of person actually survives that? And more importantly, what do they become when that loop finally breaks?
Well, that right there strikes at the absolute core of our deep dive today. We are exploring the alchemy of trauma.
The alchemy of trauma. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, because when a human being is subjected to just unimaginable pain, it doesn't just put them under pressure.
Yeah.
It melts them down. It dictates the entire course of their story, basically forcing them to alchemize that suffering into an entirely new form of power just to survive.
And we're pulling from this really phenomenal stack of sources today to look at this. We're diving into the raw, unfiltered sci-fi and cyberpunk narratives of the Universos Fragmentados series.
Right, specifically looking at the texts Ani Vermelia, Metade im Shamas, and Reposa Sonum Comgados.
Yeah, and inside these worlds, we're going to trace the journeys of three really distinct characters. Three people who were put through, like, the ultimate psychological meat grinder.
Oh, absolutely.
And they come out the other side as three very different things. A weapon, a shield, and a bridge.
Which is honestly a perfect way to categorize them. Because you have Trix, who takes this horrifying systematic abuse and transmutes it into a bloody matriarchal empire.
The weapon.
Exactly. Then we have Hikaru, who survives the ultimate maternal betrayal by basically disappearing entirely into the cold logic of quantum nanotechnology.
The shield.
Right. And then finally there's Akiko, who voluntarily abandons a perfectly safe, sterile life to step into the violent reality of the underworld.
The bridge. Okay, let's unpack this. Because for you listening, I really want you to think about how a lump of coal becomes a diamond under pressure. But instead of diamonds, today we're looking at these very different transmutations. So let's start with Trix.
Or, as she was originally known, Aquilina.
Right, Aquilina. And to understand her transmutation into a weapon, we really have to look at the forge she was made in. Because this isn't a story of just random, chaotic violence.
No, not at all.
Her trauma was terrifyingly intentional. She is the daughter of Hideon, who is the Pakan, so like the supreme boss of the Voroscoy Mir.
Which is this incredibly brutal Russian syndicate.
Yeah.
And the psychological weight of that environment, I mean, it just cannot be overstated.
Suffocating.
Yeah, because Hideon is not a father in any traditional sense. He's an architect of cruelty. He basically viewed Trix's mother, Daria, as nothing more than a temporary pastime.
Which is so gross.
It is. And ultimately, she is murdered. And then Hideon subjects his own daughter to just horrific physical and psychological violence.
And he doesn't even always do it himself, right?
Yeah. He routinely delegates her beatings to his towering enforcer, Rurik. But, the really chilling part is his justification for all of this.
Oh, the molding.
Exactly. Hideon operates under this twisted patriarchal guise of molding her. He literally believes he is forging her into an unbreakable, relentless heir.
He genuinely thinks he's doing her a favor. It's like the ultimate toxic parenting taken to a sci-fi syndicate extreme.
Completely.
He heats her up and beats her with a hammer over and over, trying to make the perfect blade. But he completely ignores a basic rule of physics, right?
That's right.
If you make a blade sharp enough and you keep pressing your thumb against the edge, it is eventually going to slice your hand wide open.
And slice it does. I mean, the climax of Trix's trauma response is one of the most visceral sequences in the source material.
It's intense.
It is. But she doesn't just, kick the door down with brute force. She uses her intellect. She utilizes a nanohack called Cloakify.
Okay, wait, let's talk about how that actually works for a second, because I think it's brilliant.
Oh, go for it.
So the fortress is guarded by advanced nanotechnology security, right? Like molecular sensors that would normally just shred an intruder.
Right, instantly.
But the Cloakify hack doesn't blow the sensors up. It actively rewrites their subroutines in real time.
It tricks the system.
Exactly. It tricks the environment into believing she belongs there, or rather that she just doesn't exist at all. It's this perfect digital ghost protocol.
which is what allows her to bypass the impenetrable security and confront her abusers face to face.
And then it just gets messy.
Yeah, the violence that follows is absolute and deeply, deeply personal. She drives a dagger directly into Rurik's jugular, ending the man who, delivered so many of her beatings.
Wow.
But for her father, Hedion, she discards the high-tech weaponry entirely. She just grabs a heavy gold statuette right off his own desk.
Just a heavy chunk of gold.
Yeah, and she smashes it into his skull, beats him to death with her bare hands, and then if that wasn't enough, she feeds their remains to her wolves.
It's savage. I mean, it's really brutal. But we have to look at the symbolism here, too. She didn't just assassinate a mob boss to take over his racket.
No.
She completely inverted the structure of her world.
She dismantled a deep-rooted patriarchy. I mean, when Trix takes over the Vorovskoy Mir, she flat out refuses the title of Pakan.
Right, she changes it.
She assumes the title of Matka, which in Russian translates to queen or mother or hive queen.
I love that.
She takes the agonizing memory of her mother, Daria, and the physical scars inflicted by her father, and she transmutes all of it into this terrifying absolute feminine power.
She becomes the alpha wolf.
Exactly, rewriting the syndicate in her own image.
But I have to push back on the idea of this being a complete victory for her.
Okay, why is that?
Because does this vengeance actually heal her? As a reader, that's what you're waiting for. You want that catharsis for her. But the text really pulls the rug out from under you.
It does, yeah.
Right after she bashes his head in, the text explicitly notes a void in her chest. The original Portuguese phrasing is faltou alivio, faltou alegria.
There was no relief. There was no joy.
Exactly. So if transmuting into the Madka doesn't bring relief, did she actually save herself? Or did she just lock herself into the exact monster-shaped mold her father built for her?
That raises a really incredibly poignant tragedy about her alchemy. Because she took the fire used to burn her, and she simply became the fire itself.
Right.
I mean, from a survival standpoint, obviously, it's a massive success. She achieved ultimate autonomy. Nobody in that underworld will ever lay a hand on her again.
She's untouchable.
But psychologically, the text is warning us that blood is just a terrible sealant for the void left by childhood trauma. She built a throne out of the hammer that beat her, but she still has to sit on it alone.
That's a great way to put it. Trix turned outward. She projected her pain onto the world to control it.
Yeah.
But what happens when you can't strike back? Like when you don't have the physical power or the resources to overthrow the people hurting you, that trauma turns inward.
It looks for a place to hide.
Exactly. Which brings us to our second journey, Hikaru. Because if Trix is the weapon, Hikaru is absolutely the shield.
And the contrast there is striking. Because Trix's trauma was this calculated molding by a powerful father. But Hikaru's trauma comes from the absolute chaotic neglect of a powerless mother.
Right.
We find him in dystopian Nagasaki in the year 2857. And he is only 8 years old when his mother, Chiyo,
8 years old.
8, and his mother, who is just hopelessly addicted to a synthetic narcotic called neo-heroin, actually sells him to the Ryokai Yakuza clan.
I really want you listening to think about the gravity of that. Being an 8-year-old child and the one person who is biologically hardwired to protect you literally trades your life to a violent syndicate to feed a chemical habit.
It's unthinkable.
The foundation of his reality isn't just broken. It never existed.
No, it didn't. And the underworld he's thrust into is one of complete physical violation. The deep dive into his origins reveals horrors that, frankly, force us to slow down and really process what he endured.
Yeah.
There's a particularly harrowing scene detailed in the sources where syndicate members forcibly drug young Hikaru with a narcotic called erosin.
Ugh. The mechanics of erosin are just, they're pure nightmare fuel.
They really are. The text describes it as an erotic torture narcotic.
Just horrible.
It essentially hijacks the central nervous system, forcing the body to experience intense involuntary physical pleasure, while the mind remains completely lucid, trapped in a state of utter terror and degradation.
It completely strips away any semblance of bodily autonomy.
Entirely. He's a child, entirely at the mercy of sadistic adults. And he's only eventually extracted from that specific hell by a terrifying, enigmatic mercenary named Seaman.
So think about the everyday human instinct for a second. If you're listening right now, when you feel completely out of control in your life, maybe you're stressed at work or your personal life is totally chaotic, your instinct is usually to find one tiny thing you can control.
Right, you organize your desk.
Yeah, or you stick to a rigid workout routine. You seek predictable systems. Hikaru does the exact same thing, but on a quantum level.
That is the perfect way to frame his transmutation, because he survives by escaping the unpredictable, horrific cruelty of human beings and disappearing into the absolute predictable rules of machines.
Right.
He somehow manages to decipher this mysterious French diary focused on quantum nanotechnology, or QN-tech.
Which, for an 8-year-old brain, is staggering.
Oh, it's genius level.
We're talking about technology that manipulates matter at the subatomic level, and what does he do with this godlike knowledge?
Well, he builds a companion.
Yeah, he creates a mechanical raccoon dog named Tanu. He starts building atomic-sized robots. He thrives in the Yakuza underworld, not by becoming a violent brute like Trix, but by becoming an indispensable cyborg engineer.
Because systems have rules.
Yes.
If you write a line of code, it executes that line of code. It doesn't lie to you.
A mechanical raccoon dog doesn't sell you for neo-heroin.
Exactly. When the organic world is the source of continuous violating trauma, Hikaru transmutes his pain into inorganic mastery. He begins replacing his own vulnerable flesh with metal and code.
Because they're quantifiable.
Yes, and most importantly, they're controllable.
Right, but I have to ask, is this actually survival, or is it just the ultimate form of dissociation?
That's a great question.
By physically integrating QN-tech into his own nervous system, by literally becoming a cyborg, sure, he's blocking out the PTSD, but he's also blocking out everything else.
He is.
Is he surviving the chaos, or is he just systematically deleting his own humanity step by step so he never has to feel anything pain or otherwise ever again?
Well, what's really fascinating here is how the text portrays his emotional state later on. Hikaru is incredibly guarded. He is almost emotionally frozen.
Like ice.
Yeah. And the only times we see cracks in that armor are when he's interacting with his creations like Tanu, or when he's navigating the lingering, really complicated trauma bond he shares with Seaman, his rescuer.
Right.
His transmutation into a shield saved his life, undeniably. But it fundamentally alienated him from the human experience. He built a shield so thick and heavy that he is completely isolated behind it.
He basically survived by making sure there was very little of the original him left to hurt.
Exactly.
So we've seen Trix, who had trauma forced upon her and became a weapon, and we've seen Hikaru, who had trauma forced upon him and became a shield.
Both children without a choice.
Right, zero choice. But the dynamic completely flips when we look at our third subject. What happens when someone who is perfectly safe chooses to step into the fire?
Which brings us to Akiko Akiyama. Her journey in the year 2879 is entirely voluntary, which changes the alchemy completely.
It's a totally different vibe.
It is. Akiko is a brilliant doctor living in the zenith, which is this floating, hyper-privileged, hyper-sterile upper level of a dystopian Sao Paulo.
She basically has the life everyone in the slums below is literally dying for.
She does. She leads a highly prestigious revolutionary memory research project called Cognizant. Her life is predictable, it's physically safe, and she is highly respected.
But
the text makes it clear she's also incredibly emotionally numb. She's just going through the motions of an elite existence without actually feeling alive.
And then reality quite literally crashes into her.
Enter Maya.
Yes, Maya. Maya is this dangerous, enigmatic woman from the underworld, the Netheria, or Centralia as they call it. And Maya literally pulls Akiko out of an exploding train.
This completely upends her life.
Yeah, she saves Akiko's life, but in the process completely shatters Akiko's sterile illusion of the world. And shortly after, Maya leaves Akiko a package.
Right, containing a vintage watch, a compass, and geographical coordinates.
Along with a question, is she ready to cross into Maya's universe?
And Akiko's decision to say yes is the pivot point of her life. She leaves the zenith.
To put this in perspective for you listening, imagine you are a highly respected, heavily protected surgeon working in the world's cleanest, most technologically advanced hospital.
Okay.
And then one day, you discover that the power keeping the lights on and the life support machines running in your hospital is actually being generated by systematically draining the blood of the people in the muddy slums directly beneath you.
Wow.
Once you see that, you can't unsee it. So Akiko walks out the front door, climbs down into the war zone, and sets up a triage tent.
That analogy perfectly captures the horrific conspiracy she uncovers when she descends into the Netheria. Because she doesn't just find poverty down there. She finds her own family's fingerprints all over the suffering.
It's awful.
She discovers that her own father, Reiki, is the mastermind behind a Black Ops project called Mentis Imperium.
And this ties right back to that terrifying scenario we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive, the hacked memories.
Precisely. Or rather, to expand on that mechanism, the Mentis Imperium project weaponizes the very field Akiko dedicated her life to healing.
Right.
It uses advanced nanotechnology to neurologically mind control people. The nanites physically block the synaptic pathways associated with positive memories, joy, comfort, love.
While simultaneously forcing the brain's cortisol-heavy trauma centers to endlessly loop the subject's worst, most agonizing experiences.
Exactly. It breaks the human will by trapping them in their own mental hell.
And her own father is the architect of this mass psychological torture. The betrayal there is just staggering.
It shatters her identity.
Completely. Her entire worldview, her family legacy, her prestigious career, it was all built on the suffering of the people below. This is her inciting trauma.
Okay.
But look at how she reacts. She doesn't go on a bloody rampage to assassinate her father like Trix did.
No, she doesn't.
And she doesn't retreat into cold, unfeeling technology to hide from the betrayal like Hikaru.
She becomes a bridge. Akiko transfigures her shattered reality into radical empathy. She actually uses her incredible medical expertise to heal the mercenaries of the underworld.
Yeah, she's the one who heals Trix when the Matka is poisoned by hostile nanites, right?
Yes, and she heals Hikaru's damaged creations. She deliberately chooses to stay in the chaos, surrounded by violence, to mitigate the suffering.
Which really makes you wonder, is Akiko's empathy actually her armor?
How do you mean?
Well, by willingly stepping into the crossfire and bearing the pain of Maya's world, she's actively fighting back. She's proving that the most resilient response to a world designed to break you isn't to become a weapon that breaks others.
Right.
And it isn't to isolate yourself behind a wall of code. The strongest response is actual bleeding human connection.
If we connect this to the overarching theme of the source material, Akiko represents the rarest and arguably most difficult alchemy of all.
Yeah.
To be broken by the revelation of how cruel the world is, and to respond by trying to stitch that same world back together.
Wow.
Her trauma doesn't harden her into dominance, and it doesn't freeze her into dissociation. It softens her into a healer. She physically and emotionally connects the sterile, apathetic world of the Zenith with the bleeding, chaotic world of the Netheria.
Let's pull all of this together because the through line here is just incredible. We've just explored 3 profound reactions to unimaginable pain inside these sci-fi narratives.
3 very different paths.
We have Trix, who took the trauma of systematic abuse and transmuted her pain outward into a weapon of dominance. She became the Matka to ensure she would never be a victim again, even if it meant sitting on a lonely throne.
And we have Hikaru, who took the trauma of ultimate betrayal and violation and transmuted it inward into a shield of technology and code. He survived the chaos of the Yakuza by systematically removing his own human vulnerabilities until he was more machine than boy.
And finally, we have Akiko, who took the trauma of a shattered worldview and a monstrous father and transmuted it into a bridge of empathy and resistance. She chose to heal in an environment specifically designed to hurt. Now, why does this matter to you listening right now? You might not be fighting cyborg Yakuza in a dystopian Nagasaki.
Probably not.
Or dismantling Russian syndicates with nanohacks. Or uncovering literal mind control conspiracies in a floating city.
But the psychological mechanisms behind these transmutations are deeply, uncomfortably human.
They really are.
We all face moments that break our reality. We all experience pain, betrayal, or loss that feels entirely insurmountable. The core message of Universos Fragmentados isn't just about the cyberpunk world building.
Right. It's about the universal human capacity for transmutation.
You rarely get to choose what happens to you. Trauma is often thrust upon you, completely out of your control, by people you trusted. But you absolutely, unequivocally dictate what you transfigure that pain into once the initial fire burns out.
You are the alchemist of your own life. When the pressure hits, you decide what shape you take.
Which leaves us with a final, really lingering thought to mull over.
Oh, I like these.
We've talked about what it means to be a weapon, a shield, and a bridge. But what happens when these coping mechanisms inevitably collide in the real world?
Oh man, that's the real question.
Right.
Because if a weapon like tricks someone who needs absolute control and dominance to feel safe, collides with a shield like Hikaru, someone who refuses to let anyone in who actually survives that impact.
And more importantly, does a bridge like Akiko even have this structural integrity to connect them? Or will she just be crushed in the middle by the weight of their unresolved trauma?
That's intense. The pressure changes you, undeniably, but how you interact with everyone else's transmutations, That is the alchemy we navigate every single day.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We will catch you next time.